Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Power Man Podcast. My name's Rory Paquette. I am so grateful to be here, folks. Thank you all to all of our listeners for everything that you've been doing ever since we made the move to 7 days a week. You folks have just showed up out of nowhere, and I really, really appreciate it. You're showing up and interacting more than ever, and I cannot thank you enough. All of the likes, the subscribes, the DMs, everything else. If you're not out there doing what you're doing, I don't get to sit here and do what I'm doing. So eternally grateful for that. And if you are a friend of the program, and I know you are, then you know what we have to do before we get rolling. We got to pay a couple of bills, folks. So let me take a sip of my preferred beverage. Man, that is delicious stuff. Wow. And you guys all know what we're drinking. That's right. It's Freedom Hill Coffee at Freedom Hill Coffee on Instagram. Go check them out. Look them up. Deep, dark, rich, bold, and beautiful. Just like my wife. They do a wonderful job. It's a mean bean. They brew a mean cup of joe. Folks, they support veterans, which is the biggest reason why we support them. Go take a look at them. You all know how important veterans are to us here at the Power of Man. Thank you all for your service. Um, and folks, we have a fantastic guest with us today that's going to talk about a lot of those things. So go get yourself some Freedom Hill Coffee. It's not too late. You can order it real quick on your phone right now at Freedom Hill Coffee on Instagram. Go look them up. Tell them Power Man sent you. Now, before I try to keep up with this, insane guy that's across the table from me who has accomplished so much, I mean, his list of accomplishments is longer than my arm. So I'm going to go ahead and take one more sip of this and we're going to get rolling. All right. Please welcome to the program. Let's see. He's been in the Olympics. He has, my goodness, written a book with Steve Forbes. This guy has the financial market cornered. He's a former athlete. He's the founder of Wings for Heroes, which is amazing also. Something that we're going to be talking about a lot today, folks. And this is the guy who basically says that the important thing for all of us is to keep the promise that we all made, and we're going to find out what that really means here in just a few minutes. Please welcome Loo-beem Kogan. Loo-beem, how you doing, brother?
I am doing well, Rory. Thanks for having me here. And I really loved the introduction. That was really cool about the coffee and analogy with your wife. So I
Thank you. I
am definitely
appreciate
going to
that.
order and try that. So
Go for it. It's
that's
good
for
stuff,
sure.
man. I really do drink
Okay.
this. I don't just endorse it.
Ah,
It really is good. But no, I appreciate that, man. I really do. Loo-beem, you've got so many things, brother, on your resume. One of the things that stood out to me when you and I were talking about you coming on the show was you have faced so much adversity in your life, brother, in different ways, and yet you keep finding a way to overcome it. It's like you just don't know how to say give up. You don't know how to say no. I don't know where that comes from, man, but you're an incredibly strong individual, and I just can't wait to hear more about your life. Tell us a few things about yourself, just so we can kind of get started.
mhm. I will answer the question that you just asked in terms of where it comes from, and it all comes from inside. I don't think any of my big accomplishments came from here. I didn't think it, but I found out with time and life experience that we have a compass inside, and I am really in tune with my compass. So when I feel that something wants to come out, I will pay attention to it, and I will definitely take a few steps in that direction and see if it starts developing, if it becomes the feeling becomes stronger, and I really feel like I have to get it done. I will go after it. And
That's awesome.
all big goals have adversity, and adversity is something that I think overcoming adversity is one of my biggest pleasures, because the bigger the adversity, the more time it takes, the greater the satisfaction at the end. And again, the satisfaction is the internal one. I never
Wow.
do anything because of the money, but because, first of all, it sometimes things scare me. And as my one of my good friends says, just, Loo-beem, you have a really difficult time with ignoring or not paying attention to things that scare you. And he says it's enough for me to go to the gym. So
Nice, nice. I love your accent, and I'm wondering, where are you from? Where were you born? And where are you calling it
okay.
from today?
I was born in the former Soviet Union, and I grew up in the 70s and the 80s. And when I was 5 years old, the Afghanistan war started, and it lasted until I was 16. So the first part of my conscious life the war in Afghanistan was always on the background, and the former Soviet Union had the mandatory draft. So at 18 years old, you get drafted and they send you to a place, that the Soviet Union was conquering at that time, expanding that huge Soviet empire. And I think what I do today, no, I know what I do today is definitely came from my childhood because, as you mentioned, I was an athlete. I was always interested in sports since very early age. And I remember that my biggest supporters were the Afghanistan veterans. It's the guys who came back from the war, and they spend a lot of times with kids who were trying to do, sports, and they were really generous with their time. And what really surprised me and shocked me and put a question in my mind that I carried for 40 years until I found the answer. It was, why would they all get drunk at the end of the day? That was one part of the question. And the second part was, why would they have fights with police all the time? And the system in the Soviet Union was that the police would find their source of entertainment or expressing whatever they had inside. They would find Afghanistan veterans and they would have fights. And we were little kids. We would just pretty much, sometimes it would be 7 days in a row, we would have that kind of entertainment. So the guys would train us in the morning, they would help us, then they would get all drunk, and then the police would show up and they would have a fight. And I was always wondering, why is the system that sent them to war, and a lot of them came back, all of them came back with PTSD. Some of them came back really injured, and some of them didn't come back home. And I don't know why, but I really had this question, why are they like that? Excuse me.
Yeah.
Why are they like that? Why system is not supporting them? So, and I will answer that question a little bit later because, it took a lifetime to find the answers. Um, my father always told me that you're not going to go to fight in any war because, we don't believe in that. And again, there is a huge difference when you volunteer to defend your country as opposed to when your country drafts you at 18 and sends you to kill people in some foreign land for no particular reason. And again, Afghanistan war was, one of those
Yeah.
senseless wars that was started. And again, I've seen a lot of people come back not well. And when I was 17 years old, one day my dad came home and he said, "Okay, we're going." And I said, "Where are we going?" And he said, "We're going." I said, he said, "We are leaving." And I said, "When?" And he said, "In about 3 or 4 hours." And I said, "Where are we going?" And he told me that we're going to the United States. And I said, "For how long?" And he said, "Forever." So I had 4 hours to pack up. And, at that time, it was 1992, and Soviet Union broke up in 1991. I was born and I was raised in the republic that is called Ukraine, that is now an independent country that is being attacked by a much bigger power, a nuclear
Right.
power, Russia. And I basically, once the Soviet Union broke up, immediately we had all our competitions, all our training camps canceled. And it seemed like my skiing career was over because it doesn't make any sense to ski when you can't compete and you can't go anywhere for training. So they were wrapping up all the sports programs. And when I was going to the United States, first of all, growing up as a child of Cold War, my picture of the United States was that Ronald Reagan was sitting in his office and he had this big red button and he could go and we'd be finished. It's
Right.
kids' imagination that it's just so simple to end life on the planet, but that's the propaganda, that's the brainwashing that I grew up in. And going in the States, I also knew that Lake Placid, New York had Olympic Games in 1932 and in 1980. So I got my jumping suit, my boots, and my helmet. I wore my training suit, and I remember that on the plane, I didn't even have socks. And that is how I came to the United States. Now, if we're talking about adversity, um, first of all, you have the language barrier, but the language can be learned. I think another barrier that people have who come from another countries is the cultural. It's the values. It's the things that you were raised with. We have completely different values. And my uncle lived in New Jersey for 5 years before we came, and I asked him, to help me find the place where I can ski. So he wrote to different schools and the National Academy in Lake Placid. They called me for an interview, for some testing, and they offered me a scholarship. So my first year in the United States, I got a chance, I was in the boarding school. They fed me, they taught me English, and they gave me skis, and they said, here, you can go ski as much as you want to. So my first experience in America is that Americans were really generous. And that continued throughout my life. I spent next 23 years in the United States. Um, yeah, but first experience was learning the language. Or first barrier was learning the language. And when you live in the boarding school, we had only one exchange student. He was from Japan. And my roommate, one of my roommates, he wanted to study English, and we spent endless hours learning words without a dictionary. So that's the first guy who was teaching me English. And, he was so generous with time. And when I'm saying that Americans are generous, things were different in the early 90s than they are right now. Right now, nobody has time. People,
Right.
people are extremely short on time because we have so many obligations. But it really worked out for me, and it worked out in the sense that I completely separated from my past. Like if you move to New York, New Jersey, there are bit large communities where you can assimilate with your own people and you can spend 20, 30 years and not really learn English. But for me, it was different. And I'm really grateful to the National Sports Academy that they took me out of that environment and placed me in the culture that would become my culture. I am an American. I consider myself an American. And, later we'll talk about Ukraine and adversities there, but I stayed as an American because I knew that I could make a difference. And we believe that we can pretty much do anything. So,
Right.
so being in the boarding school was just it was a positive experience. But one of the things was that there are always people that try to make fun of people who are weaker than them or don't understand things, and getting over cultural barrier or over things that people are trying to make fun of you because you don't understand. It's really easy to make fun of somebody who cannot answer you back.
Right.
So that was an internal difficulty that I had to get over, but it really motivated me to study harder, to learn more words than I knew and to do it all the time.
Right. Now, you mentioned in your bio that you qualified for the Olympics. Was that in the Soviet Union or was that
No,
in
no, it
the United
was it
States? Or
was so yeah. So that's another thing. It's so interesting that really you said that word adversity, and I saw it everywhere in my life, and I saw how I dealt with it. Now, I would like to mention here that it's one of the examples. Be careful what you wish for. What I'm going to tell you about. Okay,
okay, gotcha.
so I tell everyone that when I came to America, I had two dreams. One was mine, and one was my father's. And my dad wanted me to go to a really good school, to a really good business school, because he was the first entrepreneur in the former Soviet Union. For listeners who don't know what the life used to be like in the Soviet Union, the proprietorship was outlawed. If you were running your own business, yes, they would put you into prison. So you had to work for
Wow.
the state. Everybody had to work for the state. Everybody had to feed the machine. And if you were not part of that, you were punished. You were not allowed to have currency. You're not allowed at some points to have gold. So there was really strict restrictions that were placed on the society, on people, in order for the country to sustain itself. And my dream was to go to the Olympics. So after I finished National Sports Academy, I studied in the local community college, and then I got accepted to NYU. And when I got to NYU, I found out that in order for me to continue skiing, I will have to figure out how to do a 600-mile commute, because there are no ski jumps in New York City, and there are no ski hills. And basically, the way I structured my life was that I would get up really early in the morning and I would do my training before school. And at that time in Manhattan, the Battery Park City, which is the southern tip of Manhattan, used to have a big metal gate. Like at that time, they didn't have trees planted along West Side Highway. Right now, there are huge trees because when Giuliani became a mayor, he started planting the trees and they started really beautifying that area. But the days when I went to school, New York was a different place. And I remember some days I would run along Hudson River and I would get to the gate and the gate was closed. And I don't remember if they opened it at 4:30 or 5 o'clock in the morning, but I would get to the gate before it opened. Then I would do my training and I would go to school. And on Thursday, I'd be done with my classes and I would go back to my dorm. I would change, I would get my stuff, and I would go catch a bus to Albany, New York. It's a 150-mile ride. And I would pick up my car and I would drive another 150 miles into the Adirondack Mountains to Lake Placid. I would ski Friday, Saturday, Sunday. If it was not a competition season, I would come back to New York on Sunday night. But if it's a competition season, we skied like in Vermont, in New Hampshire, sometimes as far as Maine. And if you have 2 days of competitions and then award ceremony, it was not possible to go back on the same day. So I would come back to New York on early Monday morning with the first bus. And I did that 600-mile commute for over 2 years before even trying out for the Olympics. So I would say
Wow.
that, adversity and hurdles that are put in your way, the bigger the hurdles, I think you have to have big enough goal, again, that is meaningful to you, because if it wasn't meaningful, I don't know if I'd be able to do it. Probably I wouldn't even try because there is no interest in it.
Sure.
But after getting it done, I like sharing the stories that be careful what you wish for, be really clear on your dreams, right?
Right.
And the second thing, sometimes the universe presents you with a path that you don't know, you couldn't imagine that you would have to travel it. And there is only one way to get there. And, it's either you say yes or no. And I think one of the things that I'm really aware and was aware all the time is that we are here for a limited period of time. Like, for example, if you take professional skiing or any professional sports, the time period that you can become or make a name for yourself and accomplish something, it's extremely short. It's just a few
Right.
years. You can train until you become really strong, and then you have just a few opportunities, to move up to the next level or to be dropped forever. And I was still in school. I was still in New York University when it was time to, it was 97. So you had to qualify the year before on the international standard, but then you have to go and you had to compete like European and World Cups. And in 98, I took time off from school and I went to Europe. And, I was lucky to make the Olympic Games, because if I didn't make it, you can say that all those 2+ years of putting in those, miles and days, and really, I gave up my college experience, that's how I got it done. So one of the
Wow.
things that when you're going through adversity, you really need to understand that it teaches you a lot of things. And one of them is making choices. And I think that when somebody is in really tough situation, you just got to concentrate on the next step. Like, what is the next one step that I can take today to get me closer to my goal? And once you make that one step, you will see the next one best step. I really believe that
Wow.
people who spend a lot of time planning this whole big, process and trying to get it perfect in their mind or on paper, everybody plans differently. I think they're setting themselves for a huge disappointment, because when you spend a lot of time planning and you start doing something, then that very first step that you may take, it may not work out how you imagined it. And the longer you plan and the longer you imagine, I think you'd be disappointed. So
Sure.
one thing that I am 100% certain on how I achieved all the things that I achieved in my life is by taking one next step. And it also helps me not to get overloaded. Sometimes I start thinking about the mission that I'm running right now, and it's just so much bigger than me or anybody else. If we put together all our volunteers and people who participate, the mission is much bigger. And if you think about that, you have to get all that stuff done, it becomes way too difficult psychologically to handle. So I'd say You decide where you're going and you start walking by taking one step at the time. You know that saying that the 1,000-mile road begins with one step?
Yep.
Yeah, it also is traveled with one step and it ends with one step.
Nice. That's great advice. So you made the Olympics then, and you actually got to
Mhm.
participate?
Yeah, I was fortunate. I qualified for the 1998 Olympics. At that time, I didn't have my American citizenship, so the only way for me was to go back and try to qualify for Ukraine. And I went to the Olympics and I skied for Ukraine. And after
Wow.
that, the goal was to make it to the Olympics. I was never that level athlete. I was not that talented because I really think that, in modern sports, not only you have to work super hard, you also have a lot of things, other things that have to be on your side to help you become that elite athlete. And the guys and girls who win medals, they're not like us. They're different physiologically and psychologically. They were built for that one sport. They're
Right.
just at such different level. But seeing them perform, it was always a motivation, because you're always the guy who is trying to catch somebody, and you become that. It's like race horses or the horses that travel in packs. There's always a leader, and everybody's following that horse. And I always was following the guys who were stronger, much stronger than me. And I think that, because I did that long commute and we had terrible weather, 98, it rained in Europe, we practically had no snow. So what we had to do is our final qualifier was World Cup in Poland, and they were preserving the hill. Means they didn't allow anybody to practice on it until official trainings and competitions. And
Uh,
just for the listeners, I ski jump. You go down the ramp 60 miles an hour, and then you go head forward, you split your skis, and you try to fly as far as possible. So our organizing committee, they said there will be no training, and they were just really packing that hill day and night. And we had to cross the Tatra Mountains and practice in Slovakia. So imagine this: every morning you wake up, you get on the bus. A bus, it was just a, you know, big team van, and you have to drive across big mountain range to another country. Then you do one training in the morning, you eat at the hill, and you do training in the afternoon. Then you get in that car and you drive back to Poland. And that went on, I don't know for how long. And if you
wow.
think about if you think about national team, how the national team prepares, like for the national team, everything is relatively easy and it's extremely organized. They know where they're going, they have funding, they have assistance. So that year it didn't work out the way it normally did. And because I've done so much traveling before, for me it was, I didn't even notice it, but all the national team guys, by the time the competitions came, they were psychologically and really physically exhausted, and we had terrible weather, so it was just like one shot kind of opportunity. And I know how to perform when we have only one shot. And basically I tell everybody I got lucky. I got lucky.
Well, congratulations on that because you still did something
Thank
that
you.
like hardly anybody's ever done. You know what I mean? That's
Yeah.
rare air, brother. I mean, so
Yeah.
so
Thank you. I
congratulations on
think,
that.
thank you. If you have kids who really are looking to compete at the Olympic Games, there are two things that parents need to realize. Number one, we were pushing the envelope, and what they're doing right now in modern sports is just a totally different world. Like I watch my sport and I don't know how they do it, because it evolved so much. It progressed in the last 20 years, and every Olympic Games they're going to next level. So if you have children that are going to compete, you need to understand that you will have to do a lot of hand holding. There will be injuries, and that family support becomes really important. And then another thing is being with your kids and encouraging them, because I went to the Olympics in 1998. It's almost 30 years ago, but it made me different from everybody else throughout my entire career in my entire life. So if I did one thing and I didn't do anything else, it opens a lot of doors. And I think it's a really big goal and it's worth it. And one thing, Rory, that I remember, like there are a lot of memories from the Olympics, but one of my biggest memories I remember that everybody stopped fighting. In 1998, we were in the Olympic Village. There were no wars fought at that moment. It was like a pause button. Maybe there were some isolated incidents, but like all the big, everything stopped. And for me, I remember like I am a part of this peaceful mission. So that was the biggest feeling that I got, like my contribution to the world was that I came to compete and, we made a nice show, but everybody else, they were watching the Olympics and they were not killing each other. And it was a really big deal.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, that's so much bigger than our normal daily life when you think about something like that, and you get to be a part of it. Loo-beem, that's
Yeah.
awesome. That really is.
Thank you.
Well, congratulations on that. And I know you've got, a million other things that you've done. In addition to the sports, I know that you got into finance and you've been a very successful in that field. Do you want to tell
Mhm.
everybody a little bit about that before we get to the main mission, of what you're working on?
Sure.
I mean, you wrote a book
So
with Steve
basic,
Forbes.
yes. So basically, after the Olympics, I finished NYU, and since I graduated a year after the Olympics, all the interviews that I went to, most of them, not all, most of them, I was hired. People really wanted to hire me. And my first job was on the trading desk, and our address was 50 Broad Street in Manhattan. And if you look at the original address for the New York Stock Exchange, I think it was 12 or 14 Broad Street. So basically, we were three buildings down from the New York Stock Exchange. And when I walked out from my office and I looked to the left, I could see the front that they always show on TV, this white building with white columns.
Yeah.
And it was a huge deal. But living in New York and being an immigrant, the World Trade Center was to me a huge symbol. It was a symbol of, it was like the pinnacle of success of the most motivated and the smartest and the most driven and most successful people that ever lived on this planet. They built the World Trade Center and I really wanted to work in there. So a little bit down the road, when a group of traders broke away and they joined another company that was located in the World Trade Center, they asked me if I want to go. They were going to check out the office. And we came into the office and I was like, yeah, man, I'm staying here. And they said, so what do you think, Loo-beem? And I said, I'm with you. I'm not going anywhere. And they're like, you didn't even hear the offer. I said, I don't need to hear the offer. Whatever conditions you offer to me, I agree, because to be in that building was a lot more important than any compensation or any package they could have offered me. And we moved into the World Trade Center and it was really cool. First, we were on 45th floor and then we moved up to the 83rd floor.
Wow.
Yeah. And people used to call me and say, hey, Loo-beem, what's traffic like? It was like a joke. And from 83rd floor, sometimes you're in the clouds. You can't really see the traffic because everything is so tiny. It's like, I don't know. I don't have binoculars. But those buildings, they were magnificent. And the view, like if you look at the pictures, there are pictures of the buildings. It was glass from floor to ceiling. So you could stand, like lean against the glass and just felt like an open space. You just above everything. And we
Wow.
were facing west. So I could see south and I could see western part. And it's like I could see New Jersey, I could see the Statue of Liberty, I could see all the bridges. It was really spectacular. It
Wow.
was worth all the hard work just being, in that office. It
Yeah.
was really, really amazing.
Nice. Now, you did mention also that you were actually, there on 9/11.
Mhm. So just one thing that, I mean, I'm not like that now, but before my dad raised me with, his saying was that punctuality is the privilege of the kings. So you have to be on time. There is no other way.
Right.
And that the night before, my friend, my best friend from college, we studied for the CPA exam, and the prep course lasts 8 months, and you got to go every weekend. So we became really close friends, but then he was working for Merrill Lynch right across the West Side Highway. So the World Trade Center, our buildings were just crossed the West Side Highway, and we didn't get a chance to see each other that much. And we had plans that we're going to meet. It was Monday before, and his boss held him at work for a long time. So we really started late and we finished late. And the next day was the first time that I was ever late in my entire life. Yeah, I remember how it happened. And I remember that I decided then since I'm already late, for those who are not familiar with New York City and the way the World Trade Center was set up, you could take a train from anywhere in New York. In my case, I was coming from the Bronx, and you ride, it's a long train ride, but basically I could ride to the World Trade Center stop. I could take the escalator to the elevator, to another escalator, to the elevator, and I could be on the 83rd floor in the World Trade Center, and I didn't see a daylight. I traveled through the whole Bronx and Manhattan, and I go straight into my office. But that day, yeah, that day, because I was already late, I decided I'm going to go get the coffee and the bagel. And I went outside. And if you remember, at that time, we didn't really have messengers. We didn't have phones that could take pictures. We didn't have anything digital. But digital cameras just came out a little bit earlier. And I'm the guy who never wins raffles, so I don't really participate in that stuff because, I think universe blessed me in other ways, but not that I can pull something and win it. But the Christmas before, it was an office, like in the offices, they have a lot of gifts and they don't know who should get what. So you just pull the papers, and they really wanted that digital camera. And I won the digital camera. And I remember walking out from the train station, from the subway, and everybody's standing like this, they're looking up, all the people looking up. And I looked up and I saw that our building, which was the North Tower, it was the one that got hit first. It was like light gray smoke coming up from what seemed like our floors, or maybe a little bit higher, but it was on the upper floors. And my first thought was that it burnt overnight because it was light gray smoke. So I remember taking the digital camera and I took a picture. I don't remember to the minutes, but it was before 9 o'clock. It was right before 9 o'clock.
Wow.
And if we look at the timeline, the building just got hit right before I got out. So technically, and if I didn't decide to get out early, I could ride all the way and just travel up. We actually had one guy who was stuck in the elevator. So, I saw the second when the second plane hit the South Tower, I was on the north end, and you could feel boom, the whole ground shook. It just was massive. That hit was so powerful that all the buildings and the pavement shook like it was an earthquake. And then they show that, that fireball that goes in and out, but on the ground level, it shook and people just started running away. And at the same time, what I will always remember is this little number of people, the firemen, running into the building. They were an unstoppable force. They did not hesitate. And imagine like when the screaming crowd is running north and you have these guys running against it. So I am always, I always remember that, and they are my personal heroes. And one of my goals is to start with letter 10 in Manhattan, because they were right underneath our building. And I want to fly them all. And fly them all, I'm saying I fly paragliders. So I'm sorry, I'm jumping a little bit ahead of myself, but a paraglider is a little plastic bag that is hanging above your head. You have little strings, and you, like in the backpack, there is no fuselage, there is no motor, you're just fully suspended. And I think it's one of the ultimate freedoms that we can enjoy. And that's one of my next goals, is to go and start flying them all.
Wow. You have been through so many things in your life, man. We could do a separate episode on every single one of them. I feel like I'm not doing justice to any portion of your life here, because there's so much here.
Thank you for saying that, Rory. I would like to stick with the theme of your show and what you're trying to do, because I think that you created a very important space, because a lot of times people go through adversity, and sometimes they need to hear somebody who had it more difficult than they did, just to realize. And I'll save the most difficult part for the end. But basically, after the World Trade Center was destroyed, we did not have consensus in our office where we are going to be based next. I think nobody wanted to be downtown Manhattan after that.
Sure.
And because we could not decide on the place, our boss said, you know what, guys, I'm going to do something really different. You can go, I'll just do what you want to do, but I'm going to concentrate on like big banks, and working, designing softwares and just servicing them. But for me, because I love the mountains, I love the outdoors, I love skiing. I came to New York to go to NYU, and I stayed in New York to work in the World Trade Center. And after that was gone, like there was nothing for me to do. And I remember I was looking at the buildings. I went up north. Our old neighbors lived on the Upper West Side, also on the Hudson River. So we were maybe more than 100 blocks away from the World Trade Center. And the next morning we walked out and it was burning and the smoke was going towards like the Statue of Liberty and the southern part, like maybe like Jersey City. And like I looked at that smoke and I knew that I was done. Like there's nothing for me left in New York City. So as soon as the roads opened up, I drove to Colorado and I never came back to live in New York City.
Hmm.
And that was the period, one of the most difficult periods of my entire life in terms of, different struggles, because I went to Colorado and then I got a job offer from company in California. But if you think about the fact that California is 3 hours behind New York, and you have to be in the office in New York time because the markets open New York time, not California time. So it was super. I love getting up early, but that commute to the office and having to be there really early and having a totally different culture where everybody goes surfing, it didn't work for me. So I went back to Colorado and until I had an offer to go and work in Austin, Texas. But the reason I'm telling you that story is because our office was destroyed in the act of terror. And because I was trying to find a new place, I was technically classified as a displaced person. And the American Red Cross sent me a check for $15,000.
Wow.
So,
Okay.
yeah, I am saying that sometimes you don't know how things are going to work out. But if you will not stop, if you decide that I'm just going to keep moving, you'll see miracles coming your way. And I have a lot of those things that happened to me throughout my professional career.
Wow.
So I spent 1 year in Texas, and if you've been to Austin, Texas, there is no snow there.
Right.
And every break I got, every little vacation I got, I drove to Colorado. And I think it was like a 20-hour drive. It was a really long drive. And then in 2003, I was hired by American Express in Denver. And that's when I moved to Denver and I spent next 13 years, 12, 13 years in Denver, Colorado. And that is my home. And that is a home for Wings for Heroes. We are incorporated. We're a public benefit corporation
Okay.
in Colorado.
What
So
what made you want to start that?
the Wings for Heroes.
Yes.
Is it okay if we just go a little bit more in the timeline because we will
Oh,
get
sure.
there?
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
I think that you asked me about the book and one of the things that happened, I worked really hard at American Express, and for me, the biggest motivator is that if you put a ranking system, I'm gonna climb that. Like there is no money in the world that can motivate me than seeing the podium. And when I just want to, the goal is, and I guess it's being an athlete, is that you want to get to the podium. Everything else is the byproduct.
Right.
So I um, I worked really hard at American Express and I got to the top of the podium. And then I realized that I'm so busy, and the way to keep that top is that you have to find new clients. And it became such an obsession that I didn't have time to service my existing clients. And inside, I felt that it was really wrong. So in 2004, I started my own company. And for more than 1 year, I was homeless. We went, yeah, when you run your own business, you cannot really allocate a certain portion of your money for your housing, and then you just have to make ends meet. And going on podcasts, I had somebody also from Colorado. He told me he spent 10 years building his company. They got to 965 million in sales. He was living in the back of his office. He could
Wow.
not take few $1,000s out of his business because he was reinvesting and growing and growing and growing. And if
Right.
you want to grow the business, you need all the cash flow, right?
Right.
Like some people even finance it with debt, then you get super risky. But that year going from shelter to shelter, it really taught me a lot of things. And one of the interesting things was that I had a Saab, and at some point in time, I'm driving out of, I had a meeting in the Starbucks, and I'm leaving Starbucks in the Denver Tech Center. Behind me, Greenwood Village Police Department cruiser, and I drop a muffler. And I hear this boom. I was like, oh man. And I stop and I pretend like I'm looking through my papers. And the police officer comes out to my door. He's like, I'm wearing a suit and a tie, and the car shiny clean from the outside, but my muffler dropped. And he says, do you need any help? Is anything going on? And I am like, no, everything is cool. I just need to, I don't remember what I said, but they said, okay, everything's cool. They left. They drive out. I go, I get the muffler from underneath my car. I throw it in the car. And I leave the parking lot. That's just the beginning of the story with that car. Then my reverse gear goes out. And I figure out that people don't want to come to downtown because for older people, for anybody, it was inconvenient. Right now, downtown Denver, I was there in May, it's a ghost town. You can drive a bus and park it in front of any building. But then it was really busy, So I realized that people don't want to go downtown, and they said, okay, I'm going to start seeing people, and I'm going to serve and sell in their homes. So I go out in the northern Colorado. It's like in the middle of the fields, and I pull up to the house, and I have to go around the house, and I realize when I get around that it's a driveway with one way in. Like you go in and you have to come out the same way. And I'm like, oh boy, like too late, right? You cannot turn around. So I squeeze as close as possible to the house. I go in, I made a sale. I remember that day. I made a sale, I pack up all my stuff, and my new clients are standing on their porch, they're waving bye. I crank that wheel and I start going around the yard. You know those decorative gnomes that they place in the yard? They
Yeah.
had the gnomes. So I'm waving and I am like, oh man, I hope I can make it, make it out of here. And I hear this boom, boom. And I am like, and they're waving to me. So I knocked over their gnomes. But I left, I had enough room to get out. Then next morning they called and they canceled. They said, we changed our mind. We don't want what we bought, and that was the end of the deal. But
Right.
I think anybody who would knock off your gnomes is not going to be advising you or selling you anything.
Right.
So here's the adversity. I had a car that only drove forward, and I think that's an analogy of how I moved. And it took it took 3 years, good 3 years, to build a business that was bringing in good cash flow. And one of the things that I take back and I'd like to share from that period in time is that I thought that when I make money, it will solve all my problems. I thought that all my problems are related to the lack of money. And I really wanted it so hard, it was just mad. And when the money came in, well, 2004, on Christmas, we found a place. We were in a motel, one of those extended stay motels. It's nothing, it's super unfancy, but we had a roof over our head and we had organic chicken. It was such a sense of, for that moment, of accomplishment, because if we couldn't find a place, if I couldn't find a place to roof over our head to spend the Christmas, it would have been really painful. Not just because it wouldn't be the first time, but not at that night. And plus, having that organic chicken, I remember we were sitting on the floor. It was my ex-wife, my dog, and I, three of us, and we were sitting on the floor eating organic chicken. That was one of the most memorable moments of my entire life.
Wow.
And then when we fast forward a few years and I build the business and the cash flow is coming in to the point where I'm trying to push it into the next year, because like I have enough to run the business, I have enough to pay all the expenses. Like anything that comes in November and December, you have to pay in taxes in April. But if it comes in January, then you have 12 months plus 4 months, that's 16 months. And that's a big difference. So here I am trying to push my, make sure that the business doesn't close this year, but next year. And then I look around at the relationship, like the most relationship that I had in my life, and it's gone because all the hardship and all the adversity we had to go through. Like I thought the money will solve all my problems, and that's the only thing I concentrated on. I didn't have anything on my mind. 100% of my time went to working, and it was so mad that at some point, like I didn't take any vacation. Saturday was a working day, and so was Sunday until the afternoon.
Yeah.
So I allowed myself Sunday afternoon, and I remember I went for a walk. We had a 150-pound Akita. It's a Japanese dog. They are not known for their speed. It's just big and chunky and slow. And he is trotting around the park, and I'm out of breath. And I'm thinking, what is going on? And what was going on is Loo-beem, who went to the Olympics just 10 years ago, got to such bad shape that I couldn't even walk with a chunky dog around the park. And that's how it became. I was sacrificing my health. I sacrificed my relationship. I sacrificed all the friendships. I didn't ski. I didn't take vacations. I was like a machine, a machine that
Yeah.
was programmed to do one thing, and it's to go after money.
Right.
So one of the memorable times is when we had nothing, but we had roof over our head for Christmas and had organic chicken. And one of the worst and disappointing times is when I got the cheese that I was going after, but I was so empty inside because I lost the relationship that was really important to me.
Wow. That's another good lesson for everybody. That's there's a lot of us who are doing that as we speak and just putting way too much time in. So I feel that I know a lot of guys do. Um, in terms of our time, and like I said, we could definitely do a different episode on so many different aspects of your life here. But just in terms of the time we have, on the show, did you want to get into the Wings for Heroes and at least try and cover that before we kind of run out
After
here?
working, yep.
Yeah.
Okay, so after I worked so hard, I my claim to fame came when in 2008, 2009, I had a registered investment advisory firm. It was my firm. It was
Hmm.
Kogan Financial. Um, One of my degrees is in accounting. I have a degree in finance and accounting, and I was doing what I was taught to do, just dig through financial statements and annual reports. And I found that Citigroup had they had a $50 billion loss that was buried in footnotes. So footnotes are normally in the back of the annual report, but if those losses, they eventually will make it to the front of the annual report. And when they make it to the front and everybody sees it, then it's normally too late. So I got my clients and I explained to them what I was seeing. And one of my clients said, "Oh, yeah, I wanted to ask you about that Nina loan." And Nina loan, it was no income, no asset verification loans. There was a big reason. And some people were getting loans, but just saying, I make $1 billion. They sign the paper and they get this huge mortgage. It was, they could make like 3 payments and then they could only make 2 payments. And then at the end, the people were getting mortgages and they couldn't even afford to make the first payment. That's how
Yeah.
bad it got. So when the thing blew up, we were out of the market. And I waited until the TV started talking the D word. They wouldn't say depression, they say the D word.
Right.
And I said, this is the time to go back in. Because when everybody thinks it's capitulation, when everybody gives up, then you go back in. So I started a radio show in Colorado before the financial meltdown, just to tell people, look, this is what's going on. And it grew to 11 stations, and we were, I think, 6 or 7 different states. And again, I'm flying all over the place, just meeting people, no personal life. I've been trying new cars. I had Hertz Gold membership, where you walk out, your name is on the board, you get in and drive. And there was just like plane, car, hotel, plane, car, hotel. In end of 2010, I got a call and I got invited to present at Steve Forbes's symposium, Success in the New Economy. And that was the beginning of me going, with the big boys. So I presented there, and from that, I got an offer to contribute to the book that he was later writing. It came out in 2014. It became a bestseller. All the money that all the proceeds went to charity. So I haven't seen a dime from that book. It was an accomplishment that didn't pay. And next year, I got invited to speak at the United Nations headquarters in New York with Brian Tracy. First guy who showed me how inadequate I was by sending his salesperson into American Express to sell tickets for Brian Tracy. That guy commanded the room. I've never seen anybody do with people what he did. And I spent next decade, I bought all Brian Tracy's programs and I tried to, learn how to be like him.
Sure.
And then after speaking with him, I am done. I'm cashing out right now. But life had different plans. And then I found myself in Ukraine and I stayed there as an American. So the war in Ukraine started in 2014. It's when Russia annexed Crimea. The world didn't say a word. He just took Crimea and then he put his soldiers on the east part of Ukraine. There was a war going on, but they didn't wear flags. They were called green soldiers, and it was a terrorist operation. So from 2014 until 2022, it was not a war, it was a terrorist operation. Russia did not accept responsibility and said, those are our soldiers. It was just nobody knew who it was. In 2016, I was working, the company was a national infrastructure company. It was a chain of gas stations, more than 90 gas stations. And I was at one of the gas stations by the highway, and I saw a double amputee in his wheelchair. He rolled out and he went towards the highway. And I remember looking at this guy thinking, like, you can't even walk there. Where is he rolling? I carried on with my work, and then it wasn't half hour until the huge rainstorm came. I mean, it was a huge thunderstorm. And I got one of our drivers, we got in a pickup truck, and they said, we're following in that direction. And we found the guy on the side of the road. Just to give you, geographically, we were 30 miles, no less than 30, 25 miles away from Hungarian borders, 25 miles from Slovakian border, and about 40 something miles from Romanian border. And you have all these trucks, a wall of trucks that are going in the right lane. So the guy was all splashed. He was wet and dirty. And nobody stopped, Rory? Nobody stopped for that guy. We get the wheelchair in the back of our truck. We put him inside. And he was in such bad shape, like you could tell that even if you clean the up, there's not much life left in him. And that was the proximity from the childhood going back. It's been like 35 years plus, and we are in the same situation. What I saw when I was growing up, I'm seeing exactly the same thing. We drove the guy, we got him some cigarettes, we got him some food, and I really know that it was the last act of kindness that he probably experienced on this planet. Fast forward 6 years, the full-scale invasion starts, and now Russia is bombing Ukraine, and the fighting is major. And I'm watching this, it was a reel on Instagram or something. I see this teenage girl walk out in front of full stadium on her prosthetic leg. And she said, look, they can come and they can take a part of our country, and they can even take a part of my body, but they're not going to break me. And that was the moment when I decided that I'm not thinking about doing something like I was for the past 6 years, that I'm doing something. So Wings for Heroes started, like the decision was made on the spot right there. My idea was that if I take an amputee veteran and we go off a cliff, that I will scare them to death so much that they will not remember that they're missing a leg or two or whatever. Yeah.
Really?
It was really, because that's how I thought when I flew first time as a passenger. I said goodbye to my dad. I said goodbye to my brother, because I don't even know the guy behind me. I thought we were going to die. And I remember landing, and like it was such an amazing experience. So, I just put I learned how to fly. I spent 6 years learning how to fly and get good enough and licensed to fly other people. But the problem is that if I go to the States, imagine the compliance and liability, and the hoops I have to jump through to say, look, I'm going to take a hero who had an amputation and we're going to go jump off the cliff. It would cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars and years trying to get licensed, insurance, permits, all that stuff. But it so happened that, when the war started, I went to Turkey And in Turkey, life and things are much more simpler. And I found a company that said, yeah, we can fly him. And then after I found the company that can fly an amputee, I went to a governor of our region. And the reason I knew him was because his father was one of my employees. And he was working for the company until he passed away. And he was a really good worker. He was a really cool guy. He's been with the company for like 30 years. So he was doing his job, and I never had an intention of firing him. But to him, it was the last thing. You know, his wife passed away, all the kids growing up. One became governor later on. And when they called, he knew who I was, you know. And he says, okay, Loo-beem, I understand what you're trying to do. I will have somebody call you, and they will find you an amputee that you can guys go off the mountain. So I got a call. They gave me, first there was supposed to be a double amputee who was supposed to come and fly, but he couldn't come because he got scheduled for another surgery. And they sent us a young kid. Here, he's here in the middle. This is our number one. We call him number one. He's the first guy who we flew, and he is super awesome. Do I have a few minutes to tell about him?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, you do.
Okay.
Yeah.
So our number one was 20 years old for 13 days when the war started. And the draft age is 25, so he didn't have to go, but he volunteered. And they put him to fly drones. However, that's his words. He said, I felt like I'm hiding behind backs of civilians. Yes, we're making a lot of damage, but he wanted to go to the front lines and he wanted to fight. So he spent 5 months writing letters requesting so he would be transferred to the front lines. And then finally he got transferred. And the way he lost his leg, his commander was shot. He went down, and he was the closest guy to his commander. And he told me that he was like within arm's reach when he got shot. So he didn't make it to his commander. And the amazing thing is that when I asked him, you know, right now, what would you do differently? He says, you know, Loo-beem, like even when I was writing letters, I knew that if I fly drones, I have a 95% chance that I will come back home. And if I go into an assault brigade, I have a 95% plus chance that I'm going to get killed. But he said, I would do exactly the same thing. And that's the people, you know, that I'm taking care of right now.
Right.
So that's our number one.
So your thing, you take them flying in this glider apparatus, and in order to help them with their own
So
emotional issues
So
and stuff.
basically, the
Okay, go
first
for
that
it.
was
Yeah.
first, as if you study psychology, so you read what psychologists say. They say that sometimes it takes one positive traumatic experience to bring a person out of depression enough that they can, you know, go on and get well later on. So the idea at first was just to bring him here to Turkey, outside of their country, because I think it's important for an amputee to make a long trip and to realize, hey, I can do this. You know, a lot of times they just in the situation where they lock themselves up and they, you know, they don't do many things. So they have to take a trip from one country to another. Then the first program was structured that they would come for 1 week. Now they come for 10 days because after the first time they said it was awesome. You pick us up early in the morning, sometimes drop us off after midnight. Can we have 3 days that we can just sleep, just do nothing and sleep? So we added 3 more days. And when we had a session in April 9 to 19th, I took our number one. He has an open invitation for all the opening and closing of the season. And I took him to my physical therapist, and she looked at his leg, the only leg that he has, says, Loo-beem, he has big problems. You have to get him into physical therapy for 1 month right now. Otherwise, his muscles are so short that they're pressing on the sciatic nerve that runs from your back all the way down, that he can make one wrong move and he will become paralyzed.
Ooh.
Yeah. So I told him, look, you're coming back. You're coming back next month. And I had 1 month to find money to bring him for 1 month of physical therapy. We left on the same day. After we finished that session, I flew to the United States and the guys went home. And I am in the States, you know, I am traveling around different states and I'm trying to, you know, raise awareness about Wings for Heroes. And I'm spending money in all that trip, Rory. I was thinking, I'm spending the money that I could have just given to this guy so he can
Oh,
rehab for 1 month.
Yeah.
But in any case, I didn't tell him that I don't have the money to bring him. And it was 3 days before. It was on Saturday I found the money, and on Tuesday he was flying here to Turkey. And on June 25th at 3 o'clock in the morning, I sent him home. He got on the bike. If you go on wingsforheroes.org on our website and you scroll down to the very bottom of the page,
Hmm.
there are videos there. And the video of him riding for the first time is there. And it so happened that I showed up and I see him, I hear Loo-beem, and I turn around. He's standing on the bike with the helmet. And I'm like, wow. So we start riding, and I actually am following him. And you can see the whole thing. He's saying, this is my first time riding since the amputation. So the idea was to just scare them to death and give them that, that to bring them back to life. But by watching and being there all the time and seeing what an amputee needs, I discovered additional needs. Now we have physical therapy, we have psychologists, we have swimming coach, we have cycling coach, acupuncture, massage. I have everything. And here in Turkey, I am going to the States in November. We're going to fly in Torrey Pines next to San Diego.
Okay.
But the ultimate goal is to bring all the veterans here in Turkey because, first of all, I want our American guys to cross the ocean because it gives them a lot of confidence and they become really independent and they're like, I can do anything. Right? And then another thing is that my Turkish volunteers have a lot of time. Americans don't have that much time. This guy spent 1 month here. So I pick him up in the morning and we go swimming, physical therapy, then we cycle, then they swim, canoe. And if he wants to sit and look at the sunset, moonrise, moonset, somebody will stay with him. There's always somebody. And if he doesn't show up, they start messaging, oh, we don't see number one. Where is he? Is everything okay? They're looking for him. Now they're looking for him because he went home and everybody misses him. But amputee veterans need a lot of services and help. And the way my program is structured, I am the guy who sees it and I organize it right away. There is no paperwork, there is no red tape, there is nothing. You need it, I go and I figure out how to do it. I schedule, I drive them. I'm in every single physical therapy. I'm in all swimming sessions. I missed one cycling event, the first team ride, because I had a podcast and I couldn't be there. But everything else, I was there and I know how it works. And our number one is a totally independent person. He can go anywhere in the world. He can survive and he can have a full life like, most people with 2 hands and 2 legs will never have. And that's what Wings for Heroes is about.
Wow. I love the mission. I really do. I never would have thought that that sort of activity would have had that kind of impact,
Me
on
neither.
somebody who had been through that. So how did you happen upon that to learn that, to find that out? Like where'd the idea come from?
Oh, the first was like I told you, let me scare the
Yeah.
amputee to death that they forget for a few moments that they don't have legs. It was just a think about a few moments of freedom and like it was before the
Right.
war.
It just came to you
But
to do that through
yeah.
the
Yeah,
gliding,
well, look, I
the
always,
flying.
I used to ski jump, right? I thought I was a brave guy, but when I went flying, I was scared to death and I didn't have any problems, except that I don't know the guy behind me and I think he's going to kill me.
Right.
So, so all the problems dissipate when you're staring
Wow.
in faith of death. You don't think about anything except surviving. And that was the idea. But I uncovered that they have a lot of needs and I can meet them here really efficiently and really fast. We don't need to
Yeah.
wait. There is no wait list. Yeah, I cannot take, 100 people. I hope in the future I can. But the ones that I take, it was a choice. Sometimes you have a choice. You go for quantity or for quality. And I made a conscious decision. I am just going to take one guy and I'm going to travel with him the whole road. And once we get to the end, I've been every single step. Nobody can tell me we should do it like this, we should do it like that. It's the most efficient way. It's the best for them. And
Nice.
by only going together, so now I can scale it. I can have 2, 5, 10 people at one time.
Yeah.
And my goal is to have it 12 months out of the year. That, when we find somebody who has an urgent need, like they may lose their only one leg, I want to take them right away. I have an apartment, I put them in an apartment, and then we go through the process of recovery, whatever they need.
Right. And you're trying to raise money for this type of thing too, because this isn't cheap. to take care of all these people this way?
It's been self-funded for the first 2 years. And
Wow.
by doing all the podcasts, I've probably done close to I am I crossed 30, I think. And
Hmm.
I started in May. I raised $20. So
Okay.
if you want to listen about my achievements, this is not one of them yet. I realized that I need to learn that. So funding is the big issue, and we just got approved on Kickstarter.
Hmm.
I want to write a story about a 20-year-old kid who volunteered to go, and he didn't stay, flying drones. He went to the front lines, and how he thinks and how he sees life, and how we met and how I delivered on the promise. Just 2 words about the promise. When men and women go to serve in the armed forces, I think at that moment there is a social contract that's created between civilians and soldiers, and the contract goes like this: you go take care of your business, and you allow me to live freely, and me and you to have this conversation. We don't have to worry about running into a bomb shelter.
Right.
But if anything happens to you, and if you become injured, I have to take care of you. So you do your job, and after that, the responsibility, and I say I because I speak for the society. And our society, unfortunately, does not, it's not that it only doesn't want to see that way, it's out of sight, out of mind. I traveled around the world to see for myself how veterans are being taken care of. The United States has the strongest program, all the benefits. But what I've heard from more than two veterans is I survived a war, but I'm not sure if I'm going to survive the red tape at the VA. I'm just quoting what they say, that when somebody is traumatized, to fill out paperwork is a lot of effort. But if it gets kicked back and you have to fill it out again, for majority, it's practically impossible. I don't have paperwork. I don't
Hmm.
have anything. If you're missing a leg, I don't need paperwork. I know you were a soldier. You were defending your country. I want to bring you in. So I created um, a thank you mission, and not a thank you as thank you for your service. My work starts after thank you for your service. I do real things, to show them. Maybe there is one guy who could not look away. I couldn't look away. The
Yeah.
guy at the gas station, the girl at the stadium. My whole entire life, I could not look away. And right now, I am fulfilling the contract, the promise that society made, and that's you take care of us. And if anything happens to you and you come back not the same way, it's our responsibility. And I'm answering that ridiculous question that most people ask me. They say, Loo-beem, this is for the governments to, solve this issue. It's for the system. Well, I don't see the system taking care of, them all. And
Yeah.
I just thought that I have a chance, and I'm going to step up, and I'm doing my best.
Yeah. I love it. I really do. I love where your heart is with this, and I agree
Thank
with
you.
you. If the government around the world, all the different governments, if they were taking care of it, then there wouldn't be a problem.
It wouldn't be an
But
issue, right?
but
We
they're
would
not.
never have a homeless veteran or homeless amputee veteran.
Right. Yeah. We would never have it, but unfortunately we do because they're not
We do.
taking care of it. Yeah.
Exactly.
So it does take individual men to stand up and do this sort of thing. I applaud you for what you're doing, man. I really do. And man, what a story you have got. And we haven't even like cut through half of it, I don't think.
I hope I gave some things, to people who are listening, how to get through. And it's one thing, you make a decision that you're going to get through and you're going to get to your goal, and then you go.
Yeah.
And don't worry about figuring out the whole plan. Just do one step and do another one and do another one. And as training for the Olympics, or building a financial company in the States, or running company, nationwide company during war, one thing that I noticed, the more of that one steps that you take, you'll
Hmm.
see people dropping off. They're quitting left and right, left and right. Just don't quit. If
Nice.
that goal comes from inside and it's meaningful to you, just take one more step, and then convince yourself to take one more. You don't need more than one. If you take anything from this conversation, it's that you decide and you go, and one, two, one, two, and like that, you will get to your goal, and you
Nice.
will fulfill all your dreams and desires. And especially for veterans, you guys are so strong. You've gone through so much that we civilians don't even have a clue. So you are stronger than us. And you can do it.
Nice. Normally I give you the floor for a minute, but I mean, that was a wonderful wrap up. That really
Okay,
was.
thank you.
It was a
Yeah,
fantastic wrap up right there.
thank you. Okay.
If you want to leave it there, I guess the only other question I have for you is there anything that we missed, brother, today, that you want to
Are
throw in at the
you
end?
are you putting links to, because everything is on wingsforheroes.org.
Hmm.
Our Kickstarter campaign, we just added it to our page today, so it may be not functioning, but it is already there. The
You got it.
story is there, and the contact button is there. If anybody wants to hit the contact button, it will go to me, and I will reply to you. I will
Perfect.
answer to you. And if you want to talk, and if you're a veteran or anybody who's listening to this podcast, I know the space that we're in, you trying to overcome the adversity, and maybe I will help you today, and you will become successful, and you will help our mission or any different mission. So we are in the same boat. Go to wingsforheroes.org. If you need help, hit the contact button. If you can help, go to our Kickstarter or donation page. And that's all.
Nice. I love it. The link will
Thank you.
absolutely be there to the site. We'll make sure that everybody can get
Okay.
there. It'll be there for sure. Loo-beem, Kogan, wingsforheroes.org, plus so much more. Brother, thank you for coming here today and sharing everything that you
Thank you for
did
the
and putting the word
invitation.
out. Appreciate it very
Thank you
much.
for the invitation. I appreciate it. And
You
thank
got
you
it.
for doing what you do. It's
Thank you.
super important. Thank you, Rory.
Thank you. Gentlemen, that's been another fantastic episode of the Power of Man podcast. I mean, we barely scratch the surface with this amazing, amazing man and the work that he's doing. I urge all of you to go to wingsforheroes.org. Check it out. If there's a way to help, please do. There's not enough of us helping causes like this that are helping people who actually deserve it. And I hope you will take a look at that today. Look it up on your phone. It's a piece of cake, and go take a look. See what you can do. The reason we bring powerful men like this on with powerful messages like what we had today is because we are behind you 100% in your mission to become a better protector, a better provider, a better leader tomorrow than you are today, to become a better man, a better father, a better husband tomorrow than you are today. The reason that we want that for you is because you have value, because you matter. And at some point, you just have to believe it. Until next time.